I'll tell you anything for the right amount of bits.
You subscribe to Pando? That's so hot.
All right. Sounds seems to be good. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Today we've got a special guest, an entertainer. I wanna say, a little bit of a polarizing figure, perhaps. I would say, and especially since like people that follow Reddit a bit, with Ash's post about like goons being the bad guys or the good guys, and it goes a little bit back and forth. We should definitely talk about that. But I think I should say our hostiles, like the other side, likes to hate you a little bit, right? And
I never understood why.
well, I
Maybe it's
think
'cause I'm fancy.
That's exactly why.
yeah. No, I think you will always, like, whenever someone puts himself out there, right? Be on cam, be like outspoken, like in any way out there, like you
Yeah.
will always attract a certain amount of haters, right? Some more, some less, always depending on how outrageous the stuff is you say or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that's just normal, right? I mean, I've got the same thing, right? I've got some real haters in this game, so
Wait, people hate you? What?
yeah. I mean,
It's shocking. I know.
but yeah, but
It is shocking.
in general, it is always, I feel like I always said, like Eve is the best community, but it's also the worst, right? Let's not forget about that.
Oh.
Like there's really there's some shitheads in this game too, right?
Yeah, it's definitely bad. Not gonna lie, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, but
Also,
I mean,
I love my little card in the background.
oh yeah, you
I
haven't
had so
seen
much
that
fun
actually.
making that. Yeah, I had so much fun making that.
Yeah. Like we make those actually for everyone, and I think at some point, like a FanFest, maybe I don't know, FanFest 2025 or whenever the next FanFest is gonna be.
Yeah.
We might just be able to sit down and like play a round of cards with like everyone. It would be fun.
Yeah.
That would-
Shout out to
that would be
Fabo, by the way.
amazing.
He made all of these, and he made the card generator for the show too. So
That's really cool.
Yeah, you know what? That's another thing about like FC and in general. Like at some point you build a little team around you, right? I'm sure you have like a couple special guys that always help you with stuff, right? And then in this case, like it's a fobber. Yeah, you used to be way more active, obviously, right?
Yeah, so I got a life. Yeah,
So-
see, people already say in chat, Bo, why'd you shave? Because I had to. I had to chop off the beard. I had to go.
I think that beard fits you way better, I have to say.
Nah, I mean, I like my other one, but yeah.
I didn't
No,
see your
I
other
mean-
beard, but I like your beard.
So think like biker in progress beard, like 5-6 inches long. Yeah,
This is better.
yeah. Apparently, I look like an Amishman with my beard like that. But anyway, yeah, I used to have like a bunch of people that like I would trust to be like, hey, do this or do that. But I don't know if I do that much anymore. It's so relaxing this war. I haven't had to like focus on war stuff, so I could just like play when I want and do what I want.
So you're sitting it back a little bit. Is that what
Oh
you're
no,
saying?
I haven't done any leaderships. I mean, other than NGSA, I haven't really done anything. Which
Well,
I wanted to explain my card because I think people might be confused by it.
All right.
I didn't know if you were confused by one of the things I wrote down.
One of the things, like
Well-
small scale 7 points and then medium scale 0 and then large scale 8. That was weird, but
Why is that surprising?
I mean, I thought about it and I thought like, yeah, that probably makes sense, right? Yeah,
So,
either
yeah.
or.
So I don't know if people explain it, but like, hold on, I gotta look at it again. So yeah, I don't do any leadership stuff, and I try to avoid it, at least in the last like 2 years, if I can. And so that's why I put like fighting theory crafting, because like as a bomber FC, whenever I get into like big fights, I think I spend more time contemplating how I want to bomb than I do actually throwing the bombs. Because in like a big tie-dye fight, you probably get like 4 or 5 rounds, and then you have to reload or just say fuck it and the battle's
If you're
over.
lucky, right?
Yeah, and so I spend more time trying to figure out how I'm gonna throw the bombs. I think because it's not as cut and dry anymore as they just landed, throw the bombs at them. Like especially like the most recent one with the Ravens. So that's why I put time spent like I sit there for probably like I think I yelled at the last op I did with bombers where like some guy was like, "Can we hurry up and bomb them? But they're gonna get away," that kind of thing. And then like scale of operation, I actually like the solo PvP. Not many people remember this because I haven't done it in a while. Because last time I played Eve was when the war started. But like I like grabbing like expensive Tengus and like running around solo PvP. They call it U-boating. Like putting myself like really deep in like hostile space and just derping around.
Well, filaments are great for that.
Yeah, well now they have filaments. That's
Yep.
been fun. I've only got to use it a few times though, as I've been busy. But yeah, like anything under 50, and then anything over 2,000. I don't like those fights where it's like 2 full fleets versus each other. That's kind of boring now. I haven't liked those in like 5 years.
You know what?
And then
I don't know
What?
when the last time we had 2 full fleets like just
Duke it
against
out?
each other and have it be that even of a fight. Like
well, I mean, you have it like all right. So like, what I mean like is if you take a full fleet of let's say 200 dudes through a wormhole into someone's space and you try to gank something, and then they form a full fleet, that kind of is boring to me. But like if you show up in their space with like 50 dudes and then you manage to kill something and like sneak out, that's fun.
Yeah, you know
So-
what? I agree with you in terms of like at a certain size fleet, it kind of bores me too, right? Like if it's too
Yeah.
big, then there's a lot of stuff that goes out the window. Like it's all about the kill
Oh.
speed, basically, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, as an FC, I actually enjoy surveying big battles rather than being in charge of a fleet. Like watching the big picture as it unfolds, and like giving advice. I do that to. I don't know if Asher finds it annoying, but I do it to Asher all the time. Like if we're in the middle of like I did that in X47, and it's like, hey, this shit's not gonna work. Here's how it worked last time we did this, and then we had to change it like on the fly, right? So I'll do that stuff where I'll just sit in channel command and like I'm in like a probing ship or a bomber or something like small and not really relevant to the overall like battle, but still contributing in some way. Like
You're the head advisor.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm important enough to be.
I would
Listen.
I would call it a support FC, to be honest. And I see myself like I find myself a lot of times in that role. Like I'm not too keen on the big fight. I'm not too interested in it. But I like to do like the special little jobs every now and then, right? Like have that little bomb wing or whatever, right? And stuff like this.
That fight where the node crashed, right? I was in my probing covops, and like I probed out a bunch of carriers that we ended up killing, and the server came back up, and things like that. So lately, that's what I do, because the cool thing about that role is like if I have to leave because it's too late at night, or if I have to leave, or if I'm not around because of work, like then I'm not around, right? Because I teach, and that's a little more important than video games. It's teaching 125 kids. So lately, I just don't I don't have the time investment that I used to have, where I could sit here for 16 hours. So
yeah,
it's a nice role to fit, especially with bombers too. Even when like FC bombers too, bombers are so easy to get in and out of fights that it makes so like it's not as like a diehard responsibility as say the Cap FC, which is pretty nice.
And I mean, one of the sad parts of like having a bomber fleet though, like if hostiles are really good and really aware of your bombing fleet in system, there's a lot of things they can do to avoid getting bombed in the first place, right?
Nope,
like,
not at all.
Come on.
That's why I wrote Kamikaze FC. So
you will bomb anyway.
Right, like I know you do bombing, so you might understand it, but bombing used to be like when Mr. V and K Color did it, it was treated like an art form. And what do I mean by that? Everything had to be perfect. The mood, the ambiance, the lack of bubbles on the lighting. On the grid. The lighting had to be just right. The moon had to be in full 30-day,
Mercury has to be in retrograde.
Yeah, V never bombed unless it was absolutely a perfect bombing run. He would sit there for an hour and a half. And then it wasn't until I came around that like it was this idea of, oh, they're bubbled. Well, there's a wreck like over here to the right that I can warp to at like 30 and land 30 off them and just approach them and bomb. And yeah, they're in bubbles and now they're all dead. That's literally what I did in the most recent bomb run where we killed those ravens. Like, so nobody would have done that. Like, there were times where I've literally worked bombers, especially in big tie-dye fights, like into bubbles. Like, they're bubbled. I know they're going to get drag bubbled, but they're going to get drag bubbled 50 off. And we're going to slow boat through bubbles and throw bombs. And yeah, I've done that before.
But that bomb run? Sorry.
What?
The bomb run with the ravens? Wasn't there, like, didn't Bliss also do a bomb run at the same time? And didn't it just work out perfectly? That was simple, right?
When I went to do my bombing run, they had the Feroxes go in and spread out, and I wasn't interested in bombing them. But I honestly didn't think they were going to be really smart. And I thought they were just going to warp the Ravens in a ball and not bubble. But they fleet warped the Ravens and then had the Feroxes bubble. So there was no way I was going to get a good bombing run in, right? As soon as they landed. But it just so happened when they threw the bubble up, they decloaked the Rapier. And that Rapier burned out of the bubbles and gave me like the perfect, hey, let's warp to this bookmark of that Raven I probed. Or the Rapier. Sorry, Rapier. And we all landed like 40 off the Ravens. So I just had the whole fleet burn at them and bomb. But Bliss, when he bombed, it was right after my first wave blew up all the bubbles. So then his probe result worked. And he fleet his probe result, which didn't drag bubble him. And so he landed in like a perfect spot right after I did. And what's really funny is they had a different bomb type too.
I know, it came across as if it was all perfectly worked out, right? Boat is going to come in, clear all the bubbles, and then Bliss warps in and wipes out the fleet. As if that was the plan, but like obviously.
No, it definitely wasn't the plan. Actually, it was right as I was hitting bomb, like telling the guys to bomb, Asher was going, hey, Boat, what bomb type do you have? And I said Electron. He goes, oh, fuck. And I was like, why? He goes, because Bliss, or he goes, because Initiative has a shrapnel, And if those bombs had crossed, it would have been bad. But the guy with the Keepstar was like locking him, and it's a good thing that Sister Bliss bombed, because we had the same problem in that fight that had been happening all through Fountain for like the last 2 weeks, where the first bombing run was just shy of enough dudes to kill them all. They're all in like structure and low armor. And then when Sis decloaked 20 more bombers, or Bliss decloaked 20 more bombers, it was like, yay, they're all gonna die.
The cavalry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I think people underestimate the patch that came out. Like the bombers got nerfed a little bit, right? And then the EHP on battleships was increased a little bit, and it just works out. It's very tough to hit all the Ravens with every bomb, right? So it's like that the actual overlap, if you bomb from like all directions, it's not that big of an overlap. So if they're slightly spread out, they already mitigate a lot of the bombs. So, you know, it's quite tough.
Even when like we're bombing, like when you guys are bombing those Feroxes, it would just be just shy of enough to kill them. And this was happening day after day after day. And I think they changed like something with tie-dye, because it only seems to be happening in like ultra high tie-dye. It happened once with Asher, where I did like a full bombing run as Asher was playing bait on a gate, and none of the bombs exploded. And none of the bombs actually moved. And so that's when I knew bombers are kind of like boned. But bombers are so fun. They're fun to play.
I fucking love it.
I love like the adrenaline rush that you get when, like, because I've done, you know, quite a few of Panda's bomber fleets too. And when we do like the cloaky bombers and you're sitting there spamming as hard as you can, trying to get it, and then spamming to warp off as, you know, fast as you can. And with all of that, just like praying that you don't die. It's like that adrenaline rush is perfect.
Yeah, that rush I get, my grandfather described it to me once in the terms of hunting, like in real life. And he gets that when he goes hunting, like when he sees a deer. And he told me once, he's like, the day I stop having that feeling is the day I'll stop hunting. And it's the same thing with me and Eve. Like, even after this is the 12th year now, I still like do stuff in Eve, especially with like frigates, like bombers or even like interceptors. And I'll still get an adrenaline rush on like something crazy happening. And it's just a blast. Like, if I ever lost that like adrenaline rush, I wouldn't play Eve anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's weird though? You also said you're doing solo stuff, right? You can fly solo. You don't even have to fly like a pimped out Tengu because of the price tag. You would like obviously be a little bit more engaged. But in general, like just solo itself, you know, is already a little bit, you know, there's more than just the ISK value or whatever. There's like a little bit of reputation on the board. It's like a little bit,
kind of.
You know?
Today, I don't worry about it. Maybe 6 years ago I did. But today, there's so like many more opportunities to die in today that you didn't have 6, 7, 8 years ago in solo PvP. So it's a lot harder for someone that's like a nullsec unless you do it 10 hours a day. Like, there's this one Russian dude that makes these really cool videos of him and like a Macarial and such. And he plays all the time and has all this time to do it. So, you know, he can pay attention to like, oh yeah, this area I'll go to, I won't get dropped on by a carrier or super, or I can go this area and there's not going to be 30 guys on a gate. And like, I like to do dumb things too. So like, for example, I spent like 500 million on a Garmer that had no tank whatsoever. And it killed like 4 ships before it died to a ship that was somehow faster than the Garmer. Things like that are a lot of fun. So like, for example, that Garmer had a remote sensor damps fit, and I just zoomed around at like 5.5K in low sec, like sensor damping. The frigate's
like
down to
Jebby.
like 5. Yeah, it was just really, so just gimmicky things. I like doing things like that. Like the whole, I don't know, I the big thing lately has been flying a Moros, like a hog dread solo. Like, oh hey, somebody's hacking something, and then I just warp the hog dread in and see what fleet's there and not really worry about it. And like, the best one is like when you warp that dread in, right? You warp it in solo. You have no idea what's on grid. I mean, you have some idea, I guess. And then you tell everyone on channel command, oh, hey, I'm on grid shooting the bad guys. Come save me. I think that's something unique to me. I get to do that, like not the everyday person will get to do. But that's where Eve gets to be fun. Is I literally can just do whatever I want.
Veer just said, I remember when we went to save the BRB trick fleet in Tina. Do you remember that one?
Was that the one where like we were roaming like 60 jumps and we went through Declan and then Tino and Branch and then we ended up in Venal and like they had jumped ahead of us somehow and then you guys showed up out of nowhere and they all died?
No, I think so. I
Yeah,
just remember you guys being in Triglavian ships because they were fairly new.
Yeah, oh yeah, because we were doing a suicide roam, and I said any Triglavian ship was welcome, like battleship to frigate, but we were all close range fit. And yeah, and they all had Feroxes, and they were trying to sit at like 100. They kept like going to 100k. Yeah, I remember that.
And we showed up. Yeah,
you did it twice though. Not only did you do it in like the Tino Venal border, but there was another time where we played bait with a fleet in Tribute, where they had like a 200-man Ferox fleet that jump bridged his way up, and we sat on a gate and played bait with I think Jay was in a fax, and then they started shooting Jay, and we just sat there, and then you guys decloaked and bombed all their Feroxes to death, and then we just left. Yeah, that's happened.
Feroxes are great Stuka targets.
Yeah, see, I like doing that a lot because, like, playing bait for someone, because for some reason after 12 years. Nobody, I would say nobody, but they don't realize that like when I do something, it's not just me doing it, right? Like if you see a fleet where I'm FCing, there's probably either a couple other fleets nearby or somebody's hiding somewhere. Like it's never just me unless it's just me and like 20 dudes, right? But like if you see me in like a serious fleet, it's not just me. I think the only time
if people see you, you bait.
No, but they don't seem to like figure that out. It's like, oh hey, look, there's this boat fleet. Let's form literally everybody and go kill it. And then they come charging in, and it's like, oh hey, where the hell did those 40 bombers come from, or where did that 200-man Munin fleet bridge from? Like what? We didn't see that coming. Or we dropped dreads on Horde one time, and it's like, oh god, Goons dropped dreads, and then all of a sudden there was another 100 dreads from you guys and someone else, and it's like when that shit happens, people get surprised. It's like, man,
you know what?
I never saw that coming.
I do remember though, you took a capital roam up to Pure Blind, and it took like, so you wanted to fight. You
it took like 4 hours to die.
yeah, exactly. So you took the fleet up there, and then hostiles would then form, right? And I had eyes on it. So I was like, maybe I should form something, but I was happy I didn't form, even though, like, at the end, you got, like, completely outblocked with, like, a shit ton of dreads. But it took them 4 hours, right? So
they're probably
everyone's
like, what the fuck
that's...
is this guy doing?
Yeah, they're like, that's bait.
I can share some things about that, and I'll actually teach you some history, I guess. I don't know how long you've been playing Eve, but when I was a newbie, 2008 to 2011.
Yeah, that's as long as I play, basically.
Yeah, so back then, guys like Suis and Sesvin and a bunch of different like old school goons before my time as a newbie, they would get drunk once a week and like lead a fleet to die. And it was always the same thing. Go to Bob's space, wait till Bob forms up, because it would take about 30 minutes, and then fight them until you died. And we got away from that for a while in Goons because there was always something serious going on. And one day somebody was like, Boat, when you do your slosh ops, have you ever thought of doing capitals? And capitals are always viewed as like these sacred ships. But ever since we've been in Delve, like Goons are so damn rich that I was like, oh, well, why not ask? And so I asked, I got permission to do it from Jay and Mittens and all them. So yeah, the first time I did a capital like slosh up, I messaged Villy because I had to go through Villy's space to go where I was going with the fleet, so I wouldn't get blobbed, right? Because if I'd went north, I would have got blobbed by the guys that live in Declan, because they would have dropped Titans on us. And if I had went through Catch, like low-sec guys would have dropped on me. So I was like, okay, we'll go through test space and go mess with FCon because they're incompetent, right? So we had like 60 carriers, 10 dreads, a freighter, an orca, and a jump freighter, and I think we
A
had
jump freighter?
2 oracles. Yeah, well, we have it's capital ship. Capital ships could come.
What the fuck?
And we literally, I mean, we had a hyperspatial like the low like go fast freighter mods. And anyway, so I told Villy, I was like, hey, just don't drop Titans on us while we're passing through your space. We're not going to drop on you guys. And we literally gated through test space to get to FCON. So FCON knew we were coming. They had a subcap fleet and they had like 65, 70 dreads for like our slosh shop. And by the time we had got to like FCON space, I was beyond drunk. Like I was really fucking drunk. And some guy had come along in like his interceptor just to watch and burnt like 400 kilometers ahead of us on the gate that FCON was going to drop us on. And so as FCON drops, I told our dreads to go siege and then warped all our carriers to 400 off and left our fighters on the gate. And we started killing as many dreads as we were losing. We lost the jump freighter. We lost the Oracle. Like, we just lost all this, like, shit. And all our dreads are dying. But we killed, like, 12 or 13 dreads while we were at range. They unsiege and then proceed to fleet warp to us to siege again. And the second they landed and screamed siege, we fleet warped back to the gate. We went back to the gate again with our carriers and swapped again and killed, like, 5 or 6 more dreads. And then they realized, oh, shit, we can't actually hold these carriers down. So after half an hour of trying to kill us with dreads, they brought in subcaps and we just fought to the death. And it was so bad. It was good because, like I said, we only had like 10 dreads and they had like 60, but we killed more dreads than we lost. The whole fleet died and it was great. Then the second time I did it, a guy from Lawn was queen of the game and me and him had gone way back. And he didn't want to like sell his Erebus because he had to quit the game for real life reasons and didn't want to come back. So he figured if he, like got his Erebus killed, he could go out in the blaze of glory. So we took it to catch space. We literally gated around our caps and we baited with my carrier and then dropped into Titan and everything. And like, I had a guy on Brave comms and test comms at the time. And this was years ago, but like, I was streaming it and like the guy was telling me like they were going ape shit because they didn't think a Titan would show up. Because I knew I was doing a slosh shot, but they had no idea there was a Titan there. I don't know how they didn't see it. It literally gated with us. But yeah, so things like that are what make EVE fun, is doing things that nobody expects you to do. One year I did a faction battleship like birthday roam where I was really drunk. It was like 5-6 years ago. And I did an honor fight against Tau AD and we all died because he was serious and I was drunk. It wasn't fair.
Tau is always serious.
He's like, but I'll honor fight you. And I'm like, great. He brings like those legions with like the slaves and shit to rep. And he had like slaved out battleships and we're in like, I think I was in a remote rep Nestor I've seen. And like, we had a Vindicator that had a bunch of scrams because the guy got the bonuses wrong because he was drunk.
What the
like
fuck?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. That's the thing that makes EVE special, though, right? Because there's so many dumb people in this game.
Well, I wouldn't even say dumb. I mean, so I think everyone has dumb moments. And the second you show up with a capital fleet and a jump freighter, people already shut off half their brain engaging it. You know what I mean? And then they become dumb on the go. Like, you make them basically, you look engageable, so they just wing it.
Yeah.
And then if you're better at winging it, you might just get away with it, like with the carriers, right? I think there's like certain types of FCs that can just do this, like on the fly kind of stuff. They are way better at that. And then,
V used to have a phrase that like, I make the impossible possible, because you'd have like 10 FCs discussing something and all 9 would say that's retarded. And I don't like the word retarded, but they would literally say, hey, this is fucking retarded. It's not going to work. Don't do it, Bo. Don't waste your time. And then I would do it. And then like V would go to bed and like wake up the next morning and goes, wait, you killed 3 super carriers? What? Like, did that just happen? My favorite thing right now in the last like 10 years is, you say people aren't inherently dumb, but they still take my fleet invites. Literally, just during the KVN thing, I got that Titan in the fleet. the Airbus that was going to bridge them home. He was in the middle of swapping fleets, and he joined my fleet for about 5 seconds. But he was quick to realize that I was by myself in fleet. He left fleet. But I sat there trying to invite him to fleet for like 2 hours. Things like that. Like, that's literally something I will never understand, is how somebody can accept a fleet invite. And it's not like I do it on my alts. It's literally on the character Dabigredboat. It literally comes on their screen. Dabigredboat has invited you to fleet. And people still do it. And with the invention of citadels, it makes it so much easier to do, because everyone points their citadels at an object. Back when stations, sometimes the station, like when you undock, there was nothing in front of it that you could warp to. But literally everybody that undocks from like Fortizars and Keepstars, they're pointing at something. So you just fleet warp them to 100 to that thing, and it's amazing.
But back in the day, you wouldn't have the flag exempt option, right? So it would be easier.
No, because then they could just spam control space and dock, right? But like
today, but at the same time, they would also undock again a lot of times.
Well, here's what people do: they'll join my fleet and dock up, thinking, "Ha ha ha! I got that boat guy."
Talk shit in fleet, and then undock again,
and then undock again.
Yeah.
But because that's what I want them to do, right? Because undocking again puts them at full speed in the direction I want them to go. A lot of people will be sitting at 0 speed in like their super carrier. We did this to Fraternity a couple months back, right? Guys at 0 speed in a Nyx at the Keepstar. I invite him to fleet. He docks up, takes the invite, says something in Chinese, undocks, and I fleet warp him to gate at 0 to like 100 bombers, and he died.
You know what? I did that actually there's actually a video of it too. There's a jump freighter. So we did that, I think it was Nulli Secunda at the time. So we were playing around on that station, and it was like a unique setup I was trying called Hot Dogs. It was tanked bombers with T3 logis, right? It was way before Goku's, by the way, just saying, tanked bombers, right? But whatever. So we were trying to, do some stuff, and we caught some dudes in like battleships, the typical like idiots, right? And then this jump freighter on docks takes the invite after redocking, and then proceeded to shit talk his guys, right? Oh no, he didn't redock. He actually just stopped the warp. So he was just sitting there, right? And then he was shit talking his own guys for how dumb they actually are to take that invite and all that stuff, right? And it like craziness, right? Really craziness. And then, but god damn it, did boat just drop out? And now it's switched up. God damn it, I hate Discord.
Discord crashed. Hold on. I'm back.
All right.
I pressed button.
Don't move anything.
Oh, it fixed.
All right.
All right, good.
You have to click his
sec,
camera again to turn it on.
It'll show my video in a second. Right. Sorry.
Yeah, we got it.
Someone PM'd me on Discord, so I clicked their PM, and then like I went to come back to the chat, and it like Discord has crashed. First time it's ever happened.
All good. So this guy, right? So he shit talks this dude sitting there with 0 speed, like knowing like, oh, if you want to warp me off, you have to fucking, I have to align first. It takes ages. Yeah. But we were all in bombers. So I warped off, then had all the bombers cloak, everything cloaked. The T3s were cloaky too. And then we set up right next to him, basically, cloaked. And then what I did was just move him to squad command and back. So he has a session timer, right? So we all decloaked and then shot him. And he couldn't redock because he had a session timer from my fleet. And then he just died like in an even dumber way, right? Like I've seen that so many times. Right?
If you want to have a quick chuckle. So, I mean, you know how like Kunmi and Asher, and there's certain people in Eve that they're very serious when they plan and do something. Like everything is precise and accurate and serious, and then I'll come along to help them. And lately in like the last year or so, the phrase has been, "Did you really just bring the big red boat to play bait for us?" And then they're always astonished it works. So like I'll literally like they'll like, "Hey, we need a dictor so we can try to trap them," and I'll just come on the big red boat, and they're like, "Boat, are you really in your bait dictor on the big red boat?" Oh, hello. Someone just subbed.
Oh my god. What the fuck, dude?
Even Killer B got a sub.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, dude.
Your screen's gonna crash.
It's a little crazy. And I'm gonna have Miranda's voice. I'm not sure. I think I muted the event sounds actually because it interrupts the podcast.
Are they not muted for you?
They're not muted for me. I'm gonna hear you whisper in my ear for the next half an hour now.
But
yeah.
I'll do that where like I don't know, like it's gotten to the point now after so many years because a lot of our enemies and you know our enemies, a lot of our enemies just think I'm incompetent and they think that everything I'm doing is going to be a failure. Like, you know, because when you do bombing fleets enough, you know, sometimes it just fails and the whole
Yep.
fleet dies, and then they get so smug. And I think one time, just recently, I failed a bombing fleet, and there was a post about it on Reddit, like, and they were like, let me show you boat how to really bomb, and it was a guy that like bombed like 40 goon caracals or something, I don't know. And then like the next day, Elo and I set up a trap and we wiped out an entire Ferox fleet. And so it's people still seem to think, and I don't know why, but they still have this like that thought that like, oh, Boat's just incompetent and whatever he does is not, you know, it's dumb and stupid. And there's a running joke on my fleets that like every fleet I do is suicidal. You know, like I tell everyone in my fleet, like, hey, you come on my op, you're going to die. And then when they don't die, they, you know, it's a joke. Oh, I didn't die. And like, I think the last 10 fleets haven't died where I've told them, hey, this is like suicidal. You're going to die. And so now it's just like a running joke. But that's the thing about Eve. And I don't even know if I could count like how many fleets I've done over the last 12 years. But like, there have been times where like even I'll be surprised that that thing worked, you know, like pull something off, or I guess the proper term is pull something out of your ass. But
What was the best thing ever? What was the best thing you ever pulled off? The biggest
best
like
thing I
fuck yeah
ever pulled off. There's a couple. My personal favorite was getting revenge for my Titan loss or for my loss. So I'll share this story. It's really old. So when I was a newer player, no, this is way before that. This is like 2-3 years before that, maybe even longer. So when I was a newer player, when I was a newbie, like the Leviathans looked amazing. My very first Titan bridge I ever took was a Leviathan. And I was obsessed with missile ships. So I flew a Drake. That was my first ship I ever flew in 0-0. It was a Drake out of Highsec. And like I got killed by Lachesis, and that shit was hilarious. And if you ever heard the phrase, help, I'm tackled on the belt? The first ship I ever lost, I said that. So I can't make fun of people that say that because I've done it.
I'm panicking.
Let me explain. No, it's a serious panic because I was in a Drake and I was ratting because that's what Matani told me to do. Like go rat in your Drake, and I was in Goon staging system, and a Bob Lachesis or Arazu, whichever one works cloaked, Arazu, or maybe it was Lachesis, I don't remember, but the guy decloaks and sensor damps me to death, and then kills me. And while he's got me, like he's killing me, I'm like screaming for help in like TeamSpeak at the time because we had TeamSpeak 2 back then, and like I'm screaming for help and going, help, I'm tackling the belt. This guy's sensor damp. I need help. People are laughing and they're like, well, just lock him. I'm like, I can't lock him. I'm like, I'm freaking out. I didn't know what sensor damps were yet. And so I died. And that was my first encounter with Bob. And then about a year on, you have Delve 1 happen. And that's when the first time the TFC, or RSF, Goons, French and Russians, or whatever the term was, the acronym, and then like the Northern Coalition tried to evict Bob from Delve. And like we invaded Delve with Suis and Sesfin and all these guys, and Skavik, and like Skavik used to be known as like the human robot. Oh hey, look, another 5 subs. Nice.
The fuck, guys. The fucking event sounds just stopped actually.
Oh man.
So Skavik was like, he was always called like the human robot, and we had this guy named Mike Cow who'd run caps, and he sounded like a robot, and he was just like crazy. So I, being a newbie but not really, like Delve 1 happens, and I get myself a carrier, a Thanatos, and back then Thanatoses could rep things, and back then stations could lose their services on like player-owned stations. So 49 it was either 49 issue or 407 had lost all its station services, and we were stationing out of it. So I start repping it, and being the newbie that I was, I mean, I was like a year in the game, and I had this Thanatos. Some guy named Zastro. He was our logistics director. He was known for like losing work holes that made like if he lost a Rorqual, the campaign was going to go well. But another story. He goes, "Hey, Boat, you can just rep this thing, right, and go play another game and come back in like an hour and then dock up, right? Because it's going to take you forever to do it, do it." And there was like 3 of us there. But we didn't really have like a jabber back then, and we didn't really have like nobody really hanged out on Mumble. So I went and played TF2, and I come back about an hour later, and I'm in like a pod docked in the middle of Syndicate, and the cloning services hadn't been turned back on, so I didn't dock where I died, and I got told that I was killed by Bob, and I was so embarrassed. I was like upset, and then like about another 6 months later, like I'm the head FC of Goons. Like I'm like the guy. Everyone else had quit. Suis had quit. Scavik had quit. Darius Johnson's running the show now, and we're getting ready to have Delve 2 happen. And one of the like head spy guys, you might know him as Cartoon, who eventually like went on to the Fuck Goons, links me an audio clip of Sirmoli killing my carrier. Okay. And while he's killing my carrier, he's like openly mocking me. He's like, "Oh, kill that, dumb Thanatos that didn't dock. Kill Ilcia, kill that idiot." And he's doing it in that voice of his that just was so grating. I didn't like his voice. And he's so full of himself. And he's like just mocking me as he kills me. And it was so infuriating. I was just fucking pissed. And I'm like, this fucking guy, I'll get mine. And then about 6 months on, we're fighting Bob and EXE is the Bob pet, and we had been doing a whole shitload of pos shots for like 6 straight hours, and I'm in a battleship fleet with like 100 battleships, 150 guys, and that was a big fleet back then. And then at that point in time, I'd been known as that one FC that did all the pos shots. So people usually would get bored of my fleets and want to go home pretty quickly. But back then you spent all day shooting pos. It's just the way the game was. And I told my guys, I was like, "Hey, if you stay with me just about an hour longer, I guarantee you something amazing." And what had happened was...
That's always risky, to guarantee something amazing. That's a bold move.
Yeah, so there was this guy named... I started with an H. I don't remember his name. He was an EXE Avatar pilot. And the French were currently in Catch, and not Catch, and Curse, and he had DD'd them twice with the big AoE DD, back then.
Mm-hmm.
And the French were like, "We can tackle this guy with a tackle ship. We can get it." And Shadu, the PLFC, was like, "I can play bait with my like 20 dudes." And back then, Lady Scarlet was like the big dog. She was, she still is like in charge, but she was in charge then. And it's Hurley. Yeah, Hurley. And we're 2 jumps out of where this Titan is like living. And Lady Scarlet starts to come our way. She goes 1 jump and then stops. Doesn't see us. So we're sitting on a gate with 100 battleships, 2 jumps out of where this Titan is going to like do something dumb. And, PL goes in on the station, starts messing around on the station, and you hear Hurley's warping. And Hurley warps in and lands. And when he lands, I go, "Okay, let's go," because he's going to be tackled, right? So I tell my whole fleet start burning. Well, I'm in a vigil, because back then you could FC from a vigil. And I know this might sound funny, but you got to remember, back then the battles were like ship of the line, like 200 kilometers apart, battleships versus battleships, no real logi, because who could afford logi back then? Because Guardians were too expensive. And so you would just sling shots from 400k apart, or 200k apart. And like vigils wouldn't die. You'd like oversized afterburner. You'd go real fast, and just you would sit like 1,000 kilometers from the fight, and you could like manage it because you didn't need to be locking things because everything died or it warped off, right? And so I burn my vigil in, and I see Hurley there, and he's bubbled, and so I charge in, and they didn't tell me he hadn't DD'd yet, and I land like 150 off him, and the DD back then was 250k, right? So I start charging in with my vigil. It's the only character I have. The only warping goons are going to have, because shit was broken back then. So I go charging in, and the DD goes off, but it doesn't kill my vigil. Somehow it didn't kill my vigil. And I bump into Hurley right as a Hictor bubble goes up, and my fleet enters local. And there's an audio clip, if you can find it someday. You hear Shadu go tackle the avatar. He's gonna get away. He's gonna get away, and he starts laughing. And he starts laughing at the realization that Hurley actually landed. And then he is quiet and giving orders for like 30 seconds. Then he starts laughing again as he sees 100 battleships jump in the local. And what was unique about that kill is it was the first Titan killed with subcaps, with no caps or dreads or anything. So it was wonderful. And then shortly thereafter, within a week, Delve 2 happens, right? So like we turn out the lights on Bob, and Delve Invasion happens. And during the Delve Invasion, I got my revenge on Sir Mole and the Aeon that killed my Thanatos in the same day. So we caught the oldest Aeon in the game, who was the Aeon that killed my Thanatos, on a gate. And then a drunk goon helped us kill Sir Mole's avatar. And this is like his 4th death. I don't know if you remember this, if you were back then, but yeah, a drunk goon won Eve in a Hector. I don't know how many times that's happened in this game's history, but he was sitting on a pos that we thought that they would bridge subcaps to, or at least like jump to, and we were trying to shoot CSAAs in this like one back system of Western Delve, right? And this drunk goon is sitting on a pot, like on the pos shield, like 2K from it, cloaked in a Hector. And all of a sudden, like we're over here, like if you can imagine like the system, right? We're over here and the pos is like here, and we're like shooting this CSA, and you hear this drunk guy on comms go, "Hey, I need you to like warp to me." And we're like, always... why would we warp to you? Like what? And he goes, "Oh, I have Sir Mole tackled. He signed in, and he bumped away from the pos, and like he's in a bubble. Like I'm between him and the shields. Do you want me to light my Sino?" And we're like, "What do you mean Sir Mole is tackled? Like you mean?" He goes, "The avatar." He's slurring his words, like he's slurring. And he goes, "I'm pretty sure he's fucking tackled here. You want me to light my Sino?" And we had just killed the Aeon, and there was no fatigue. And so we have like 100 caps waiting to jump in. And so he lights his Sino, and as we jump in, we bump Sir Mole a little bit further off. And he melts. And so, yeah, I got revenge within a year's time on both guys that had mocked me and killed my Thanatos. And then, of course, I went on to this kill Bob. But, yeah, so that's my story of the game. Yeah, it was 2008, 2009, something like that.
Revenge is great. Revenge is great.
But I think I've gotten revenge on everyone like 10 times over now. I've played this game for too long. But yeah, there's my my old Eve story. So.
And so, like whenever you have, favorite, yeah. But whenever you have something like that, like a little bit of a grudge, right? It just adds a little extra to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, outside of parts of the drone lands, I've conquered almost every region of 0-0 at least once, and some regions multiple times. Like I remember, like here's another little story that not many people know. Like if you remember White Noise when they owned Branch and all that space, like when goons were couch surfing with TCF in the north. I was at like a Eve meet with Mittens, and he like sat down next to me on a couch and like threw his arm around me and was like, "Hey, Boat, I need you to like siege a region and kill it." And so like a day later, we declared war on White Noise and marched into Branch, and we wiped out Branch in like a week. A lot of people don't realize just how many like things happen in this game because two drunk people are talking together in real life, and we're like, "Yeah, hey, we can do that." I think I've done that like 5 times now, where people are like, "Hey, Boat, what do you think about doing this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it."
Yeah, I mean, so I think the whole like at Eve meets, there's a lot of things that can, come from those, for example, right? I think the reason for that is it's way easier to trust someone you meet in real life, right? Like it's very unlikely that the guy is going to play you in real life and just talk like whatever, but you can bank on whatever he says there usually, right? I mean, there's a higher chance, let's say it that way, right? Some people are just unreliable, they say they want to do stuff but they're just dreamers, I bet you have seen those, and it must be frustrating. Yeah. I think that's the opposite of what you do, right? You'd like to just undock and wing it, and then some people just think about it for like months and never do anything, right?
I told this story on, I think it was Talking Stations like a month or two ago. I remember where I told this story, but like I remember one time I literally went to Cancun with a bunch of goons through a mutual friend of mine who had owned a hotel down there, and like 10 of us went, and this one director who is from Korea was all like, well, because I didn't get to go, I went fuck goons, and like he like leaked a bunch of logs and stole a bunch of stuff and then like left. So it's like there are people who think Eve is just that. It's like Eve, like that's it. And it tends to make people very confusing that you can develop a relationship outside of Eve, because this is something I've been observing for like, I don't know, 10 years now, because I like to watch things and like observe. And I've always, there's like three kinds of chats, like groups in video games, right? So you have your first group, which is like your family group. And this is what I like to think of, like the same 10 guys that hang out on TeamSpeak together for like 20 years. Either they knew each other in real life, or they now know each other in real life. They play Call of Duty together, or they play these little games that let 5 people play together. And they know each other. They have inside jokes. They maybe will get together in real life, but they're best friends, right? And you always have that, like, you have those kinds of groups. And then you have the group that goes up to like, say, 50 or 100. And out of that 50 or 100 in the group, and games like BDO have this, you may have like 20 or 30 guys that come on comms, maybe on weekends, and then like the same, 15 guys will hang out. And then you go to like Eve levels where there's thousands of guys. But even inside of like goons, there's still those little like clique groups, kind of like you would have in high school, like little groups that like they hang out with their corp or their group. But I've never just hung out with my corp, right? Like I've been in Murchie 12 years and I've never done like Murchie only.
But why not?
Because I don't.
I think you
like,
can have it all.
Stuff.
But at the same time, I'm doing a lot of like big fleets and all that stuff. And I think like, so my corp, that's that little family group, right? And then I have an alliance. That's that expanded family, I would say.
Yeah.
And then there's everyone else, right?
Like my corp, see, a little bit of. I guess
yeah, your corp is massive, right?
No, not really. It's like 200 guys, or it used to be. But like right now in Jabber, my corp, there's 35 guys. So like it's not like it's a huge, but it's the same 35 guys that have been there for like 10 years. But when I was a newbie, goons had what they call squads, because as an alliance, goons all were in one corp, but they treated these things called squads as like little corps, like little groups to hang out with. So you had like Rose Squad, Delta Squad, you had Theta Squad, which Theta still exists, you know about that today. But each one had their own identity, and Rose Squad was the group I was a part of, and they were just weird and unique. But the thing about goons back then is Goon Fleet, which was the name of the corp, Goon Fleet. They were required to do certain things, and like certain corps had requirements. You had to do something. My corp, Murchie, was known for being the group that had no requirements. You could do whatever you wanted, and so that meant I was able to do, again, whatever I wanted in Eve. And I think that's what made me stick to the game. Is like I joined a group called Black Ops back when it was, this is 2008 now. Back when they had like 15-kilometer, a second interceptors with snakes. You can get to 20 or whatever, things like that. So I was in Black Ops and would do like go live behind enemy lines before citadels were a thing, or before like you would just live back there out of a carrier for like a month or 2 months or 3 months. You never like left the region. So I used to do that, and that wouldn't have been possible. Like my corp just like do whatever you want. And so that's why I never like did things with my corp. And there was a time where they tried to make me CEO, and I turned it down, I think once or twice. I think I'm a director. I'm not sure. Like I have the ability to steal the whole corp wallet if I needed one day. I think I stole $1 billion like a month ago, and they still haven't noticed. Because I didn't want to transfer money from like my Redeemer pilot, and I needed a Redeemer to help K Color, so I just transferred $1 billion and bought one. I don't think they've noticed.
it's very similar to my case. Like,
yeah,
I became CEO at some point, but I kind of didn't. Like I'm not like managing the entire corp. I'm just holding the title. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone has to like do those parts to make it work in the end. Like I'm just gonna hold it.
Oh no, I don't do any parts in my corp.
Well,
I don't.
I mean,
no.
We have people that don't do like organizational stuff. Like there's but you always have that little core of people, And that's important that every corp has a little, like 4 or 5 guys that just keep the show running, right? It might be Posses, tomorrow it might be Citadel. Like, there's always something that needs to be taken care of, right? And
maybe, but I never did it for my corp.
no, I mean, I'm not saying you did, but there was always.
I mean, there's people out there, yeah.
Yeah, but like, say what?
See, it's hard for me to see it that way. Because again, ever since like I was a newbie, it was always alliance level things, big, like fleet for at the time maybe 50, 100 guys, but would have been big back then. But like being around like everything. So, for example, Goons actually used to do freighter ops where you had to like, because we didn't have jump bridge networks, so we didn't have. I mean, even if you had them, but like they would do escort the freighter ops, and like Goons had to go on that. I didn't have to do
old
that,
school
but,
stuff.
Yeah, this is back. Yeah. But my thing is like I enjoyed doing what I wanted, right? And there's certain things like I used to take pride in because I used to get told things were impossible. And I always enjoy it when people say that. Like it's impossible to get that guy to join fleet, or it's impossible to bomb that group, or it's impossible to do this. And so my first experience with the word impossible was on Sinojammers. It used to be like Bob Sinojammers were a fucking nightmare to go into because they would have 200 jammers, like ECM jammers, and small guns, and it just was a mess. And I had this thing where I prided myself on never losing a ship on a jammer shot. Like I would always take down the jammer, never lose a ship. And I was very meticulous about it. And before then, gun fleets would get wiped out, and we'd have to go 2 or 3 fleets deep to get that jammer down. And then once jammer came down, we would be fine. But it used to be one of those things where like people would look at it like, oh, that's impossible. And so that's something that I enjoy with Eve. It's like if someone says to me, oh, you can't take think of a really crappy ship in Eve that's like subcap, and someone would say, oh, that ship's bad for PvP.
An Ibis?
Okay. Ibis, here we go.
I've got a good example for that too.
I formed a 200-man fleet of rookie ships and fought a battlecruiser fleet and won. We killed 16 battlecruisers, Drakes and stuff in Delve one time in Null.
I did that once to Bjornby. I kind of felt sorry because I pinged out and said like, everyone get your like he wasn't a battleship, right? Yeah. And I'm like, what do I engage him with, right? Like he was roaming around, didn't get a fight. I was like, what am I supposed to do here? Like bring another battleship? It's kind of weird too. So like, and I had like I think 30 dudes in a fleet doing something else at the same time. But what ship type 30 dudes gives one battleship a good fight? That's what I thought, right? So it was like 30 noob ships. They're not gonna cut it. You're not gonna have the DPS. So I pinged out, said like, hey, grab your noob ships. You've got 5 minutes, and then go. And then suddenly everyone was fucking hyped for it, and we had like 100 dudes, 150 dudes within seconds in noob ships, right? And I'm like, what am I supposed to do now, right? I can't just like now he's getting blocked, right? It's fucking hard to. It's hard to find the balance sometimes. You know what I mean? Like And then we dropped in, and it was kind of fun, but he kind of felt blocked, rightfully so, right?
When Brave were newbies, and they lived in GE, like I used to take fleets there, and
well, they do still live there technically, right?
Technically, yeah, but like I would take fleets there before Citadels, and I would just sit on their undock and say, okay, come fight me, and like just wait, and they would, and
good old station games.
Yeah, station games. I don't know. See, there's things about Eve in all my years of doing this. Like I said, it's the make it impossible possible. Like the PR Dash Gate camp that lasted 30 days before Bob broke out. That unironically was viewed as impossible. Like when we first came up with it, like when I suggested let's do it, was right after Bob had moved everything into PR. All of their stuff, dreads, everything, and I said to Shadu and Empyrean, who was the NCFs, one of the NCFCs, I said, okay, what if we just bubbled the undock and made them have to undock into us because we have more than they do, and we can determine how we fight and like the range and all that. Here's a story that not many people know, and I have the video of this on my computer. It's like 10 years old. The invention of sniper dreads was brand new. All right, it had been in the game a month. The concept of it, we came up with it, and I dropped. I think it was AAA were seen as like the boogeyman. I don't know if you remember Evil Thug, but Evil Thug and AAA were the boogeyman. Evil Thug is famous for being his alliance got bought out by a Russian tycoon, and the joke used to be new teeth, new apartment, because the guy gave him 30 grand to like attack goons. No, because I mean we worked with AAA to try and kill Bob in the during Delve 1, and before we had moved to Delve for Delve 2, we were fighting Stain Russians, and we were also fighting Red Alliance, which was a Red Overlord, and they were owned by this like Russian aluminum tycoon, and so they weren't really making progress, and we weren't making progress. But AAA was like staying neutral, and Sir Lordex, who was the aluminum tycoon, dropped 30 grand in the guy's pocket and was like, "Look, you're gonna come fight for me now, and bring AAA with you." And us and the French had been duking it out with these Russians, and it was like a downtime thing. I was exhausted. It was like pre-downtime. I was so tired, but we only had like 30 dreads, and they had 65. But their 65 were trying to kill this boss that was really important to us, and they were close range fit. So we dropped like 35 dreads at like 200 kilometers and started sniping. And I think we started the fight with 18 and eventually got to 35. But we traded like 1.5 to 1. Like we killed like 40 and lost all ours, I think, or something like that. And they in the video, like you see them, they drop like they had known that we had the sniper dreads, so they dropped like 6 pulse revs like right on top of us. And their sniper dreads were worse than ours because theirs had more tank, so they couldn't shoot as far. But ours like sacrificed tank to like get more distance. And like that was like the biggest rush when I was like a relatively new FC. And things like that happen that in this game today, and people are just like, oh, that's no big deal. Wow, you killed 30 dreads with like 30 dreads. Good job. And it's like people don't realize just back then how much of an achievement that was. You know?
Even today, I feel like that's the kind of stuff that's way more interesting than the, if you catch someone, like, for example, we take subcap fleets into catch, or hostiles take them into Delve Curious, and then we murder them with like the ISK value is maybe higher, right? Than if once, but at the same time, how much of an achievement is it at the end, right? But if you get away, like if you take a creative like approach to it and you make it work, that's just so much more fulfilling or whatever. Like I don't know what the word is.
I like doing something and then moonwalking out, like getting away with it.
Who doesn't?
Going into a situation where hey, this whole fleet's gonna die, and then turning around and getting it out. Like the most recent one is when Kikimoras were relatively new and people realized how to abuse them because of your fleets. I think we formed like 60 Kikimoras and like Logi and had like 20 bombers, and we went to Horde Space. And like Pittsburgh formed a fleet. Like this is the first time I've ever seen him do a defensive fleet in my life. And he was an NC. He formed a fleet, Horde formed a fleet, and I think Fraternity came all the way from their space, right? They had like 400 dudes for like my 100 guys. And we were in a dead-end constellation. And I told the whole fleet, like, hey, you're going to lose all your Kikimoras. I'm sorry, it's going to cost you like 300 mil. Like, you're just like, you're screwed, right? And they eventually just left and like let us walk away. And they like laid some trap to try catch us as we left, and we just dodged it. And it's like, when stuff like that happens, it's just like, did that really just fucking happen? Like, and that's, I guess you could say, where the fun is, right? That's where I still have fun in the game. Is like you pull something off and it's like, holy shit, that just happened. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it's always best if, like, for example, Kikis, right? That's like, in my case, like I like to fly Kikis all day. I would do that all day. And then engage mutants with it is usually, it's a really bad idea, right? But everyone should know that. Like the logical way is like mutants will murder your Kikis easily, right? Because they're faster, more range, plenty of tracking.
Your Kikis get murdered a few times by mutants.
Well, we got murdered a few, but I would argue we murder them more often, and that's simply because the mutant FC knows he has the advantage, and then they become like complacent. They make a little mistake.
Yeah.
They warp into my bubble, right? If you do that, like who knows what's gonna happen? And then like, you know, it can be an advantage, or I see it as an advantage, like technically alone, that you are like at a disadvantage. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. Like if everyone knows you're at a disadvantage, you can turn that to a degree into a good thing for you and make it work. And then obviously, if you then fail, it's not that big of a fail, right? Which is always a good thing. Like you said earlier, right? When you tell your guys like, hey, everyone's gonna die, well, then the expectations are so low you almost can't fail, right? You know what I mean? Like it's almost like any kill that's already of success, you know what I mean? So yeah.
And that's another thing too, is I don't know if our enemies understand this concept. Alpha Star maybe because he's in Horde, but like I know Pittsburgh definitely doesn't understand this. And he never understood this when he was in Goons. But they're like in general, it's the concept of Goons have always had where, yeah, you may have lost 100 ships, but A, did they have fun? And B, did you kill the thing you wanted to kill? I mean, there are times where, yeah, my whole fleet has died and they killed one dread, and everyone looks at that and goes, you just lost 30 billion to kill like 3 billion. And then I turn around and everyone's high-fiving each other and toasting each other. And then the next day, those same, 150 guys show up, right? And then you'll have like an FC, like let's say Horde, who like that guy that lost those Feroxes, and he'll go and like lose those Feroxes to bombs. And then the next day he calls to call up 200 dudes and gets like 65 or 70. And it's like, me, I don't care. I already got bombed, and like more people to shut up next time because like, okay, how are we gonna get bombed this time? I mean, like for example, I have this thing that I've had since I was a kid, and I call it. I mean, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, so I always attribute it to dyslexia. But I have this thing of where when I see something, my brain will process it. It'll be processed in my brain. I'll have a solution of what I want to do, like to like the next step. But by the time I say it, my brain's already like 5 or 6 seconds further on and has decided the next step, and moved past what I'm saying.
And it confuses you or what?
No. So like, there's this famous phrase in Goons of if you warped, you're dead. That is from me, and it's because, and this one Goon said it best. He goes, when you go on a boat fleet, take what he says and count to 10, and then after you count to 10, then do it. And that has happened more times than I can count in Eve, where like I'll fleet warp us somewhere and realize, oh fuck, yeah, they moved. I knew they were gonna move. Oh shit, they moved, and then I have to tell everyone to stop, or like, okay, we're gonna land, and we're probably gonna die here because I shouldn't have warped us that spot. Yeah, it's just that happens. That's happened like the whole time in Eve, and then I remember when I was in like second grade, I was like 8 years old. They told my parents like, hey, he's genius, but like his processing is delayed. And the step of like getting it from the board, like what the teacher wrote on the board, to my brain and then to paper was always discombobulated. And so I was a horrible student for like the first like 5 years. So they figured out how to get past that. So yeah, that happens in Eve so much, where like I like in the bombing fleet against Ravens, like there I think it was twice or 3 times where I told the fleet, hey, take the fleet warp, we're gonna go bomb them, and then I screamed like, hey, control space, they've already moved or something's changed, so I think I'm unique in that sense. I don't know many people that have to tell their fleet to stop, change of plans like 30 times. And
I don't do that all that much, but it happens. It's like, if we do this, then this, but like yeah. I believe I'm like, I like to plan things, but at the same time, like when the time comes, I also like to wing it a little bit. And then I go like step by step. And a lot of times it served me well. Just in tie-dye, it doesn't serve me well. Right? In tie-dye, like everything goes out the window, right? Everyone has perfect reaction time. And being faster than the other guy isn't as useful, right?
No,
but, yeah.
But there are like, okay, there's a phrase of like, if you've ever seen the movie The Right Stuff, It's about American space program. And there's a famous phrase in that movie where it's called pushing the envelope, right? You're pushing what you can do in your ship to the point of breaking, right? And this happens in Eve a lot. And there's the FCs that can control that, and there's FCs that can't. And look, I love Dave Archer, and he's a lot of fun. But if you remember KVN, he got his fleet like smart bombed, right?
Yeah.
And that crashed the node. But he should have never been in that spot to begin with. But he had warped there, thinking that no, he could bounce from there to the Keepstar safely, avoid bubbles, and it was a good idea in his head. But it didn't translate well because with tie-dye and everything, it just kind of his fleet sat there. And it's not anything negative to Dave Archer because everyone's died in traps in some way, form, or another. And like I said, people died in me all the time. But it's the concept of there's a really finite difference between an elite FC and a brand new FC. And that difference is to control that edge, right? It's you're on grid with a hostile fleet and engaging when it's time to run away and when it's time to fight. And there are a lot of times where like FCs will make that call, hey, let's brawl it out. Like I think AlphaStar did this recently, where like he had this like gigantic Ferox fleet just to get eviscerated by Initiative and Goons and like Elo and Laz and stuff, because he thought he could brawl it out and like had no concept of the fact that he was losing like 10 Feroxes for every one ship he even shot at, you know? Maybe it's spatial awareness, I don't know, but like the ability to like judge what's going on, right? And I think I do that very well. And like to be able to look at the big picture and be like, hey, this is bad. Like we don't need to be here anymore. And like you'll hear that like on like especially on bombing ops, right? People will look at me and be like, why didn't we bomb them? They were right there. And it's like, no, that's
That's not how it
like,
works.
It didn't work. And like or like we throw bombs at something and like you'll hear an FC go, Boat, that's dumb. Why are you bombing them? They're jackdaws. Like I did this the other day where I lost like 30 bombers because we bombed jackdaws. And the only reason we bombed them is their FC wasn't with them. He had some random guy fleet warping. And I was kind of hoping that random guy would just scream like, everybody hit your defender missiles, but he timed them out per squad. So the bombs didn't explode and we all died. You know, things like that.
It happens. You know, so that's another thing. Sometimes you have to, like as an FC, you have to try give hostiles the opportunity to make mistakes. And then sometimes you bank on certain mistakes. And if they don't make them, it might just be a mistake on your part. You know what I mean? Like it's always this back and forth. Like if you bet on them not using their defenders well and you warp in, but they do, like then you did a mistake technically, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you try to play around what your assumptions on how they're going to react. So either way, if they don't react, even if you wanted them to react badly,
every time you fleet warp a fleet in, it's a gamble, right? So like I know a lot of people may not see it this way, but even if I have 100 guys in like a proper fleet, I have no problem fighting 200 from it's like that phrase lions leading sheep is more dangerous than sheep leading a pack of lions, right? Like I have no problem fighting a 200-man horde fleet with 100 dudes and knowing that I'm going to win, even if I lose. Like even if I lose all my ships, like I have no problem with that. Or like 5 chemo ships versus 100 Cormorant boys. Or like I've seen Init do this a lot, where they like take typhoons and like, you guys can't beat us. We're warping to the sun. Come honorably fight us. And then you guys land in bubbles and they come right behind you in the bubbles and
Transformers.
Goodbye. Yeah. Their whole fleet gets died. Yeah, it's so. or you guys did this once to Brave, and it was absolutely hilarious because I was there baiting, right? So you guys came in your typhoons and you were shooting missiles at Brave, and my guy on Brave comms was all excited because it's like, oh, they're shitty typhoons and they're shooting missiles, right? So when you guys warped to the sun, you had a Nestor with you, and this is before like aggression prevented you from swapping mods, and you all swapped to smart bombs mid warp.
Yeah,
and
that's my fleet.
Yeah, they had no idea, right? And this was a couple years ago, and like
there's a good video of that.
Yeah, Horde chased after you, or not Horde, Brave, and then they get smart bombed, and you just hear the FC go, shit, I thought they had missiles fit. Didn't they shoot us some missiles? And yeah, that stuff is like the best thing. Yeah. Literally the best thing.
Yeah, I miss the Transformers, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a one-trick pony, right? Like if you do it too many times, I think it's about time again. Like it's about time again. We do it as like maybe once a year.
The new hotness right now is Praxises, because as cheap as they are, they can do so much fun stuff.
Well, I know very well.
Art bomb. Well, all right. So, like, okay, here's an example.
Panda, have you heard of the Praxises?
But have you ever heard of the what do they people call those ravens that like kite or like the rocks? Fuck, there's a name for them. They like stick shoot like 300k and like bounce around. What was your guys' name for them?
3G Ravens. We call it 3G Ravens, Bush Ravens, whatever you want to call
Bush
them.
Ravens, right? All right, so Bush Rocks, Bush Ravens, whatever. So right after you guys did that a couple times, I when the Praxis came out, we did Bush Praxises. But we didn't do it the way everyone else would do it. I came up with 4 fits, and all 4 could hit to the same range at about the same DPS using all 4 damage types. So we had Cruise Praxis, Rail Praxis, Arty Praxis, and Laser Praxis. And the people that came on the fleet was told, bring whatever gun you can fly with. And we had 100 of them. And we went to test space and tackled a couple of Rorquals and proceeded to kill carriers and dreads and Rorquals, all while sitting at different, like, we all MGD'd off and we were all at random parts of the grid, but we all shoot the same target. So they were in their nightmare fleet that they would run, and they couldn't hit us, but they couldn't leave triage range because they had no logi. And it was like the best thing ever. And we're there in like these 1-isk Praxises. And I think we lost all of them, but it was so hilarious because every time they would get close to us, we just hit the MGD button and we'd all like jump away, but we could keep firing. And yeah, so gimmicks like that is, I think, makes EVE fun. It's taking a concept that someone does and someone really theory crafts and makes it like this perfect, wonderful, like imaginative thing that you look at and you go, God, that's fucking amazing. And then take that, put it on something it doesn't belong on, and make it work when it shouldn't work. Like I said, make the impossible possible, right? And the Praxis thing is an example of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the best part, and that's why also I think most people don't like the current hack meta, right? Because it's so boring, right? It's like Munons, Eagles, maybe Sacks and Zealots, you know.
So the hack meta now is 10 times more aids than the old Proteus Tengu T3 meta.
One. Yeah, I don't know if I agree, to be honest, because at the time. But at the time of the T3s, so they were so tanky that at a certain level, like, you needed a big fucking chunky fleet to crack these. And at the time, not a whole lot of people did have those massive fleets to crack them, right?
It's the same thing now, right? So back then, you shot their Logi. And when all their Logi died, they would leave, right? But the difference from back then to now is back then they had afterburners, right? So if they got bubble fucked, and I use that term because like hundreds and hundreds of dictors, right? If they were bubbled up really well and you did kill all their logi, you just started chewing through these like 2 billion-ish ships, right? And it became really expensive. And like PL and NC, they hated it. They hated losing them. So it was like you would catch them and you kill like 50 of these things and they would just shut down for the day, right? And they would lose skill points. Well, nowadays it's the same thing, right? These Munins, you don't ever shoot the Munins first. You shoot their Claymores because they can't ADC. You shoot their Logi, and you shoot their Hugins and their Lachesis, right? And as soon as all that's dead, the mutants just turn on their micro drives, burn as fast as they can at 3k a second with heat, and then they warp off, and fight's over. Now it's worse. Because the reason it's worse is mutants are going 2.2k a second without heat. You couldn't get that with the Proteus, right? The fastest you went was 700.
That's true. The engageability, the disengageability isn't there for the.
You can't disengage with that. Where mutants, you can just tell your whole fleet go in a random direction. Nobody has enough tackle to hold that down, and if they all go in random directions, they can kill the tackle ships.
Well, that's why we don't fly zealots that much anymore. Because for the fights we had, it just doesn't work. We can't just disengage technically, right? So when hostiles lost the fight, they lost a couple extra bill, and they're like, yeah, fuck it. But if we lost the fight, then we lost a chunky fleet, right? So,
and that's why, like, for example, that one Y2 fight we had where we broke into system, where we like bombed all those ravens. The fact that we broke in should never have happened, right? If our enemy were smart and intelligent, they had 200 carriers worth of fighters on the gate, yet we were able to break in and get away. That should never happen because you could tackle us down. But again, you had mutants and MJD ships, and they didn't bring scrams and they didn't tackle anything. So you look at something and go, that should be impossible, and it happens. So,
I mean, mutants can always jump in, burn off, and stuff, right? So
Yeah,
they
that's
can
the thing.
always get. You can't keep them from getting in, really, right?
yeah. Speaking of the dog in the background, we have our school like dog is a Labradoodle, like a really big one that's all white fur, and she's so floofy. And I was playing with her today, and she just hops around, and the flute goes everywhere.
Aww.
Oh,
Yeah, Shadow was bringing me toys earlier and throwing them in my lap, trying to get me to play. I was trying to
Yeah, I
keep it
saw
low
that.
key.
Oh, by the
Speaking
way,
of
guys.
whiteboards- Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, let me just say, like, if anyone in chat has like any good questions, right? Miranda is gonna pick them up and bring them up whenever it fits in and stuff.
Well,
I'm not
they
sure
asked
if
if
you
you
found any
guys-
openings.
they asked if you guys. No, I haven't. You guys have literally been talking
That's what I thought.
nonstop for an hour and 24 minutes.
Easiest guest ever.
They did ask if you guys would be interested in doing any type of Eden Com doctrine in the future.
No, until CCP buffed.
All right.
Boom. Well, I don't know about Pando, but me, no, they're so bad.
I went back and forth with it, to be quite honest. So I have been thinking about it. Like, how does the math work out, right? That's the big question. Because, oops, sorry guys. Like, I think if you have a really big fleet with the frigates or the cruise, I think the cruisers were the ones I had my eyes on. If you have like 200 of these, like whatever you hit is in trouble. And then don't forget, you hit 8 other targets too, or like what is it, like 5 other targets, right? I forgot how many it actually is. So, like, how do you counter that easily? I think if you have a shit ton of them, they can be really effective.
Nope.
There is potential there. So you say no because like it's too spread out on too many hostiles, or like why do you think it doesn't work out? And I think the key part is picking the right target to hit, right? But
I tried this. So the reason I said I will literally never use them is I went on the test server, right? I faction damaged modded an officer fit and like pimped out this one cruiser version of it, right? And loaded up close range ammo and sat 30 kilometers off of a couple of faction light drones, and I could not break their tank. They were abandoned faction light drones in the middle of space, and they were tanking this gun. It took me 5 minutes to kill all 4 of them. And from that moment, I went, yeah, fuck this.
well, the thing is, though, they have missile application, right? So if something moves really fast,
worse than that, like it's so bad. Well, no, like I said, these drones were just sitting still. They were at 0 velocity, like they were just sitting still.
And was it the cruiser or the frigate?
The cruiser.
Yeah.
But the tracking, that this is, I don't know if I want to roll down this road, but like I've been trying to convince CCP for like 10 years to get rid of SIG, because I think SIG is the most broken aspect of Eve. Like
What?
you can sit there and say like facts are broken, or you could say that there's all right, hold on. You say what? You are a bomber FC, sir. Have you ever tried to bomb ANIs with their 30 SIG?
But it's supposed to be stone, paper, scissors. But you could make the argument, like, I like to use bombers, but at the same time, I also agree that bombers are oppressive. Right? I'm not saying they're OP necessarily. I'm saying they oppress certain ship types.
I would take bombers out of the game if you remove SIG and have no problem with that. I think SIG is the dumbest thing in Eve. SIG tanking, because it makes a class of ships almost useless. I always had this like joke that if ANIs were ever given like 30-kilometer more range on their guns, I would always run ANI fleets, right? Because their SIG and their tank, they're just a giant like brick
they're strong
with laser beams, and they're fun to fly, but their range is so abysmal that any fleet just sits at like kites you and then you don't kill anything. But you can't bomb them. Like, all right, so like to give you an idea, on paper they look okay. They're bombable. They have such little HP, and then you look at their SIG and you put that to bomb damage, and the bombs don't do any damage to them. It's fucking ridiculous. And I
but
think
they're not supposed to, right?
But here's my issue, right? All right, so let's take like a Rev versus a Phoenix, right? My Phoenix hitting to the same range as a Rev will do like 2 damage to a ship that's not like that's barely moving, and a Rev will one-shot it, right? Like Rev's tracking like with laser like this was I hated zealots, right? I was that guy that like suicided Drake fleets and the zealot fleets, and we would kill lots of zealots, but my missiles weren't as good. I would need like 150, 200 Drakes just to crack like a 60, 70 man zealot fleet that Elo would fly. And we'd have to suicide like waves of Drakes to kill zealots that maybe NC had or PL had or whatever. And that's why people flew zealots for so long, is that their SIG meant that they just didn't die.
But I think that's an interesting aspect. Like, I think it adds a level. Like, I totally disagree. Like, wholeheartedly, I disagree with like the.
Here's why though. You take SIG into account, it's the same problem that people don't. CCP has always had this problem of N+1. They never balance for it. But they never balance for N being 1,000, 2,000. They balance for N being 10. So if you have 10 ships versus 11 ships, SIG's irrelevant in all aspects, because on that small scale, you're gonna kill things. But when you have 1,000, 2,000, now I love people in chat are instantly gonna go, oh, look at the Goonies and CFC complaining about SIG or about N+1. But that's the whole point, is ever since I was a newbie, we fought against people who, up until recently, and I say recently within the last 3-4 years, we fought against an enemy who we would outnumber them 4-5 to 1, because we had to outnumber them 4-5 to 1 to counter the fact that they had T2 ships and Guardians and Zealots, and you weren't breaking them without enough, right? You knew you were going to lose your whole fleet, but yeah, you probably killed them, and the battle report would look horrible.
But isn't that? I mean, that's an argument for it, though.
I don't like the concept of the little guy. No, I don't. See, here's why. Because.
But otherwise, then you'd only have fucking Drakes. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe, but see, you got to realize, back in the day, so back when PL was the Kingmaker, and I use the word Kingmaker because by using mechanics such as they did, their 100-man fleets could show up to a 1,000-man fight and determine who would win based on what side they chose. It didn't matter.
But isn't that fucking awesome? Come on.
Sure, if you're in that little 100-man group, but
I mean, I'm looking at it from the outside.
You got to realize it like this, right? So you guys do this in Initiative, and that's why probably it's awesome, because you do the same thing where you'll like take a wormhole and go somewhere. But I think wormhole travel is the most broken concept Eve has ever had. And PL, and you guys nowadays, but PL back then when they were at their height, they abused it far more than anyone else. You couldn't have, like before Fatigue, you couldn't have a super fight, right? Because you knew that someone was going to take wormhole with subcaps, and then you knew they could just start gating caps and jumping, not gating caps, but signowing caps across Eve. So those little 100-man fleets would be backed up by another 100 dreads or 100 supers or 50 titans or whatever. Yeah. So you knew that you couldn't do certain things in the game with those, like my little 100-man fleet of Drakes that because goons back then didn't really have the skill points for it. So my little 100 Drake fleet could not start a brawl in Fountain without the concern of PL showing up from low sec and technically, like as far as like skill points and ship types and stuff, just making that fight pointless, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but I think nowadays, in today's Eve, wormholes are in like from a travel perspective. I'm not saying wormhole space, just from a travel perspective for nullsec blocks. I think wormholes are in a decent place right now. It's not overly used. It's hard to get the right wormhole connection at the right time for everything. It takes a lot of prep.
So much goes into it that it's not just jump into a wormhole and jump out wherever you want to go.
I'm not saying it that way, but you have to remember back then. See, nowadays it's different.
Back then,
right?
maybe, yeah.
I don't think you guys abuse it this way, but back then, PL and NC had all of the wormhole groups in EVE. Anyone that used wormholes, they had a Discord, or maybe it was a Jabber, I don't know, that would tell them every available wormhole in LowSec 00 that existed, that was probed out at any time. Because all these groups use this one app to report their wormholes, so they could keep track of them. And PL, the guy that ran the website was an NC guy. So he had access to PL and NC that they could see every wormhole ever scanned by any group that used that app. So they always knew a wormhole to use. Always. They didn't have to put work into it.
Is that confirmed? I thought always that was a little...
I've
that
known
happened?
that for years. Yeah, that was the thing. So they didn't have to go through, like if I want to find a wormhole by myself now, it might take me a couple hours to find a good wormhole in Delve that goes somewhere good. So I just use Thera. But PL and NC didn't have to do that. They knew, like, they would come to your space for a fight, and you think, oh, I got them trapped. And then they were gone. And it's like, how did they find that damn wormhole? I didn't even know that wormhole was there, right?
Yeah.
That happens.
But at the same time, you have to give it to them, because that guy must have built a tool good enough for all the wormhole groups to use, so then he could use that information for himself. So, you know,
it didn't come for free. He was in Laserhawks, right?
Yeah.
He was a guy in Laserhawks and Hard Knocks, and they used it. And then a lot of groups started using it. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but that's the thing that made PL different, is they would use third-party tools to like their advantage. For example,
but that's
I don't know
all
if
right.
you remember,
right?
Anyone that would go to the PL website, it would give them like a little moniker that they could track. I forget what it did with Eve. There was something that they had done from their website. Oh, it's the APIs or IPs. So they could gather IP addresses, and they could gather something to do with Z kill board. And anytime you went to their kill board or their actual forms, it would like track you. And that was their way of catching spies, because it would literally log all of this information. And then one day that information got leaked to goons, and we were able to catch like 15 spies in one day, all based off the fact that we had all this information that PL was gathering. But PL used to do that for years. I remember the guy in charge of PL's IT, back in the day when we met at eVegas, told me that, like, because we had a guy who ran all our form services, but he was like a white hat guy. Like he worked, what was his name? I don't remember his name now. I'm having a blank. But he was like the white hat hacker. He didn't believe in like going on people's team speaks and chaining them. He didn't believe in like downloading people's forms. But then you had the PL guy who was the PL form admin, and he was like that guy who enjoyed making someone's Discord or like Discord crash, or like back, I guess there wasn't Discord back then, like TeamSpeak. He would like, he had no problems with like DDoSing somebody and laughing about it, you know? And when we met in real life, that was one of the things he joked about, is like the number of things that he would do that probably weren't legit allowed, but he would still do them because he could, was always an interesting aspect of the game. I mean, Eve's had lots of those, you know?
But I think like people like that, they sometimes like to over exaggerate the
what they can do.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm like, any dude, listen, no, Bo, any dude who goes to like some type of Eve meet or something and is like, yeah, I'm always, you know, crashing people's Discords, and like I like to kick people out of their mumbles. It's just something that I do to, you know, pass the time. It's like, really, dude, shut the fuck up.
But he did that though. Like
X'd
I
out.
don't know. Well, okay, I don't know if you were around back then, but like this is the kind of guy who the meme started based on Sphere. If you remember the joke about PL and Sphere, came from him, because the stuff that he would do, people were like, okay, that's not legit. You can't do that. And I'm saying the Mumble Crash thing was a joke, right? Like that's something that people look at and go, okay, that's not real or whatever. That's no big deal. But one thing that was hilarious about back then is, this is before my time, but like there was a famous hacker who was in a group, and he had asked Bob to hire him for the cost of one wyvern. So this is back when supers were really rare, and only Bob like built them, or like some like guy up in Branch, right? And like there was probably like 20 of these things in the whole game, right? And so this hacker went to Band of Brothers and said to Band of Brothers, hey guys, I'll hack goons if and get you all their information and like get into their director forums and everything, because back then everything was done on forums. There was no Jabber, so like director chats were in like a secret director forum, like subform of a forum, right? And so this guy come along, and his name was Kugu, and not a lot of people remember this guy, but he came along and was like, he told Sir Molly, like, hey, give me a wyvern and I'll do this thing against goons. And he did this thing against goons, and the group didn't pay up, right? So then he turns around and comes to goons and goes, look, I will literally get you whatever information you want from Bob. And I think it was Mittens at the time was like our spy guy, and he's like, I don't believe you. I don't think you're a real hacker. I don't like you said, Miranda Lorian, like you're like, oh, that they say this, but it's not real, right? So what he does is he hacks the Goon CEO's email, and then uses the Goon CEO email to access goonfleet.com, gets into goonfleet.com, and then starts like copy pasting forum threads to like Mittens, and was like, so this is what you're talking about. This is what you're talking about. And Solo Drakman, our admin for like things, realized that that's how he had gotten in, was through this guy, the CEO's email address. And then some crazy things happened that I don't want to talk about back then, that there's stories. But anyway, from there on, Kugu ended up being the guy that he had hacked Bob. And so what happened was he had hacked one of the Bob directors' email addresses and got into their Hotmail chat. I don't know if you remember Hotmail from like 2004, 2005.
Oh yes, I still have it.
Yeah, so
We remember Hotmail.
He got into their Hotmail chat, and in that Hotmail chat was a CCP dev who would been like spawning ships for them, and all this like illegitimate chat that was highly illegal. He just saved it all, and he shared it publicly, and that's when you had the big Kagutsman thing that happened. And so, yeah, there are people out there in Eve that do that kind of thing, and you think, okay, well, that's T-Story, T20. Like a lot of people don't. They look at it and go, oh, that's not real. And then you'll look at like something that PL did, and PL, you got to remember, Kugu was with PL for like 5 years, 6 years, and in the time he was with PL, his name wasn't even allowed to be spoken on the forums. Like if you typed his name on the forums, like the mods would come in and like
goddamn Voldemort of
post.
Eve.
Yeah. But again, the guy that was the PL server admin was just like him in the sense that he had no problem like doing that kind of stuff, getting that kind of information. But then he would just give it to PL, and he used to think it was like a game. He used to think it was funny. He didn't do it for monetary reasons. He didn't do it to make money. He would just do it and then be like, here you go, guys, have fun with this. He never really logged into Eve. He never really played, like didn't fly spaceships.
Never thought about it really, probably, right?
He just did it and was like, because he could, right? And
he probably,
like,
I
bet.
bet.
Go, have fun.
I bet he saw it himself as like a challenge, not thinking about what actually he is doing and why it's wrong to do, right?
Okay, here's another example. You know about the Thera wormhole group, right? Eve Scout.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know this, but like when Eve Scout first happened, the guy that ran Eve Scout was really good friends with the guy in NC. And whenever like a major fight was going to happen that we needed the wormhole to go somewhere, all of a sudden like 6 wormholes would disappear that were anywhere near Delve, and like they wouldn't be in the app. And since we didn't really have a good wormhole tracking app ourselves, we would just use Thera to travel places. And all of a sudden, like you'd see like 6 systems that have 8 hours left, and they would just vanish. You'd be like, what? And people used to say, oh, goons are just conspiracy theorists. There's no way he would do that. And then like years later, it came out that he was doing that for NC, because they had that wormhole app themselves. They didn't need Thera, so.
But that's the kind of stuff that also makes Eve very real, right? Which is like,
no, I love that metagaming stuff.
It is a bit of a fucked up thing at times, but it makes it real, which is it makes it way more interesting at the same time, right? So I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't want to miss it.
She's not here right now. When she gets back, I'll share a story of something I did when I was younger in the game with spying, because I went on. Like I said, I like to do everything in Eve, and this one time I decided I wanted to be a spy, but I didn't want to be a spy as like Boat. I wanted to be a spy as something rather unique, and so I'll share that story when she gets back. But
you're not unique enough.
No, this was a whole new level. Actually, a lot of people nowadays might think it's wrong that I did this, but at the time it was absolutely hilarious and it worked. So.
Well, I don't know where Miranda went. I bet she had to take a bio break. People in chat have already been asking, and we are at like 15 minutes over already.
Oh, so, we are? Shit, sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't mind too much. Yeah, tell the story. Yeah.
So this one time,
I'm back. Tell the story.
Back. Okay. So this one time, my current fiance played Eve, right? And back when I was a newbie for like the first 3 or 4 years, there was always this concept of girl on the internet. Because again, games like Eve Online and bringing hundreds and maybe even thousands of people together meant that
Girls
you were going to
play video games.
Yeah, you were going to encounter women on the internet, and you would have this like concept of like men fawning over that one girl in chat. Well, there was this time there was this one time where before Twitch and before all this, people didn't really believe that it was real, right? Like you'd hear people say, "Oh, no one ever does that. No one ever does that." So I wanted to prove a point, like the whole concept of impossible. And so I made a character and I called her Galastasia, and that's my NPC market alt now. I use it for all my market transactions. But in the span of 3 months, I joined and scammed and spied on over 40 different corps and alliances while pretending to be a woman, while using a voice modulator anytime I had to have like audio chats. And it 100% worked every time. Oh, actually,
yeah. No. See, now imagine doing that without having to use a voice mod or anything. So,
I did this 39 times out of 40. The one time I got caught was this high-sec mining corp of like 40 people. The CEO was a girl. And I still remember this today. This is like 8 years old.
That's your kryptonite. CEO
she goes,
does.
Well, here's what she does. The first words out of her mouth during the interview stage, I'm using a voice modulator, and she can't tell that I'm not a girl voice-wise.
She started asking you about your period.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what she did. She starts asking me about my period. And so, of course, I have all these goon girls that like the group of, we call them Siren Swarm. I'm having them, like they're sitting like on comms, and I'm going, help me. Like I knew the concept.
Quick, how often is your period? I have no.
I knew like the sciencey stuff of it, like every 30 days roughly, and like all that stuff. But
I don't hate this conversation.
It
how did we get here?
Okay, so hold on. It doesn't come out naturally to talk about something like that, right? Unless you're a girl and you've experienced it. So of course she knew right away. No, you can't be a real girl. Like you're not Dutch. You're not a woman. And yeah,
I'm not Dutch.
No, to me, that's what they said to me. Like the girl said to me, like, you're not Dutch. Get out of here. And yeah, it didn't work. But yeah, 39 times it worked. And I think I stole like 10 billion ISK at a time when a billion ISK was pretty like good amount of money. And and I blew up people's high-sec ships when they're like, oh my God, why is this girl shooting me? And yeah, it worked hilariously.
It works pretty well.
And the best part about that story is like, if you remember Asuka, I got invited to Vegas. I'm not Vegas. To Eve, the Eve thing, and I got Eve FanFest, and I gotten really drunk the whole the one day I was there. I was just really drunk,
shocking,
having fun. And there was this, you have like roundtable discussions that CCP always does.
Yeah.
They had like a female only one with like a couple of female devs running it. And like I walked in and sat down, and I remember asking them if they thought it was appropriate that I had done that 40 corpse scam thing. Because I documented it. I documented every corp I joined. I had like a spreadsheet.
Maybe
I
an
said, did it work or
inspiration.
how it worked. Yeah, like I shared it with them. I was like, hey, have you ever encountered this? Like, is this a thing for you? And like they all looked at me like, get the fuck out. Like, why are you asking us if we use the fact that we're women to get things? Like, it's not a thing. And I'm like, well,
That's okay. Well, first off, that's false because that's absolutely a thing.
Well, this is like 10 years ago, right? Like the internet wasn't as big.
It was a thing 10 years ago too. This isn't like a new concept to the internet that girls would use to get shit in games.
So again, nowadays I would have never done this, right? Like within the last like 3 or 4 years, I would have probably never tried this, right? But at that time, I was just like, hey, this is a great social experiment. And they at the time, that group
They did it for science.
That round table, right? Yeah. Well, that round table literally told me, they're like, this was a group of women, I should say, that wanted to be taken serious for their like abilities in EVE. A couple of them were goons that I had known, and of course they talked to me afterward and they thought it was funny. But like things like that, you know, what make EVE so unique is that because there's so many people, and you know, like a battle may have 5,000 people.
Yeah, so that's where the flaw in this whole thing goes, because there are definitely women who use, like, I feel like now, like as a woman, I have to like defend this. There are women who are cute and shit to get shit in video games, but do you blame the woman for doing, or do you blame the man for giving them the shit for being a woman? And then number two is you cannot, I'm not saying you're blaming women for this, but there are people who do. Okay. Number two is that you cannot attribute all female like gamers to the type who are cute to get shit, because there are very serious female EVE players.
Okay. So I have a story for that. One girl is the exception to this rule. One.
Oof. That's a big thing to say.
And she became a CCP dev for a very short time.
Oh man. I know a lot of women who do not ask for anything in games.
No. She did ask for everything. But what I mean by the exception rule is, this is one woman in the whole of EVE that I would definitely say she abused the fact that she was a girl. And she used to do it to PL. And PL would like pimp her out in the sense of like promote her to get people to buy her stuff.
Panda would never do that.
And everyone in chat's gonna instantly know who I'm talking about. I'm not even gonna say the name.
Wait. No, we're not talking about this. We're not talking about this. She became a meme, but the problem with this whole situation is that people now use that to like degrade women in the game. That's the problem.
After her, I kind of stopped paying attention to the whole concept of it, but it was like that was like the one person I remember, like, because where I first saw her was when on Kagutsumen you had PL people linking her Amazon.com account saying buy her things, and I clicked it just to see if people actually did this, and everything on her wish list had been sold like 2 pages deep, and I'm just like,
sweet,
is this real? Like,
I'm about to make a fucking Amazon wish list.
I'm like, can I do this? Is this possible? And that's what prompted me to do that like whole like corp thing, was her. I wanted to see if it was real. Like I couldn't believe it. It was mind-boggling that you could do that. Nowadays we have OnlyFans for like guys like Pando.
Yoga pants.
Dude, that was like the inner meetup, and that was planned, and PJ actually made yoga pants because I said I'm gonna wear yoga pants on stream.
Dude, I actually have.
If I'm getting fully desperate.
Do you remember my boat hat, like the pirate hat?
Yeah.
I got that from Goons, because when I went to EVE Vegas, they wanted me to cosplay as an admiral for like my speech I had to do.
So you had to do a speech.
Oh yeah, because remember, like, I was after Asakai, right? And they wanted me to explain like my life thing. And so I, of course, because when you go to EVE Vegas, alcohol is cheap, and I guess this will be my last story because I'm like we're way over time, so sorry, but like. So the guy that was in charge of like CCP's money, like he was like the VP of like whatever finance or whatever. Like we're out one night. yeah, whatever. There's a bunch of names. I can't remember what name he used, but we're out one night, and I'm hanging out with a bunch of like really cool goons that are like wealthy, I guess. Like one of them was the guy that invented H1Z1. He was the head of Sony, right? Like he was a goon. Not many
Do you know
people
about the
remember
guy that invented the iPhone?
No.
Stop it.
Steve
That's
Jobs.
a story for later. That's a story for later.
Steve Jobs is. Oh.
She's
Anyway,
referring to
so-
Ron. That's all right.
Oh, so I'm like drunk in Vegas, and I come up to this guy, and I didn't know who it was, but I was introduced to him, and he goes, "So you're DBRB?" And he goes, and he's kind of drunk himself, and he goes, "I just want you to know that you're the reason that Eve, like I made my first quarter for Eve in like a week." He goes, "You're the guy." He goes, "You know what? Because you're that guy, I have a gift for you." And like the next morning, I show up to like the Eve Vegas thing, or not the Eve Vegas. Wow, I keep thinking Vegas. To Eve FanFest, and he hands me these beer tokens that he would give out to people, and he hands me a stack of like $400 worth of beer tokens.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I at the time I didn't like beer. I didn't drink beer. So
Me either.
I started handing these beer tokens out to like Mr. V and Laz. I think I gave Laz like 10, so he had 10 free beers. And like I exchanged 10 of them for like a bottle of Jaeger, and I exchanged it. Like, so I was just like handing these things out, and he gave me like all this like really awesome free stuff, and it all because of something really dumb. And like the next like that day, I had to dress up, and like Goon Diplomats are the ones that had me like the costume. They made me. I had a lightsaber that attached to my pocket that was like solid metal. It was a guy had literally handmade it, so it looked real. And then I had the Admiral hat, which I still have. I had an actual like dress coat, but the dress coat had like all these like fake pins and medals on it, made out of bottle caps. So I had like 20 medals. Like I looked like a North Korean dictator. On my
There must be a
chest.
picture of that somewhere.
There is. So give me 2 seconds. I'll link it in chat.
Yeah, you go find
I've got
it.
I've got a nice pin from Mr. Deep. I don't know if he's still here. He sent me like a little goodie bag that I was supposed to get at FanFest.
Guys, so while you pull up that picture, I think we have to cut it, right? So it's almost 2 hours. I hate you guys. That's why. I used to do 2 hours, so I'm not like concerned about it, but like we kind of aim for 1.5 hours. And I started a little bit later. Like usually it's 2100, but we went for 2130 because Miranda thought she's probably not going to be here in time otherwise. Turns out it wasn't the problem, but whatever.
I told you that I was going to be here on time for this one, but the ones in the future I probably wouldn't because of work.
So I linked it in chat. So that's the first image that someone took. That was on like the 3rd floor in like the little like charity dinner place.
You can send it to me. I'll put it on screen.
Oh, even better. Yeah,
you know, I put it on the stream ending thing. I'm just gonna show it at the end. I think that's probably
Mo, stop talking.
Alrighty.
Well, you told me to tell like stories.
It's great. It's great. I'm not kidding.
Talk a lot. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what you should be doing. It's like it's best guest ever, right? Like very easy.
Jay goes on a talk show and he's just like silent for 2 hours now. Can't do that. Gotta entertain the guests.
Yeah, you know, some guests are really hard to get answers from, right? And then you like, and you know, in your case, like I wrote down a couple of things we could talk about just in case, but
yeah,
We
like,
didn't talk about any of them.
Yeah, I think we didn't talk about any of them. If I look at them right now, oh yeah, there's actually 1 or 2 things we checked off, but there was like 5 things on the list. But you know, I knew like, I don't have to prep all that much.
I mean, the current war, to give my opinion, I think we're winning, but that's just my view. It's probably dumb.
We will see. Right? I think I know. Like I've been talking to Asha about certain things that we can do.
Yeah,
and I'm kind of excited for some things once it's getting into Delph.
Oh yeah.
I think things are opening up then, right? It's gonna
Do
be
you
it's
think
gonna be
they
good.
come to Delph?
Say what?
Do you think they all come to Delph? Do you really think they do?
I think so. I think they have to, right?
I
Like
think
what
they
else
have
are they
to.
gonna-
I think Test has to save face, and I think Brave has to, but I don't think Horde has to.
I think they're committed. Like looking at the Keepstar chain they put up, I think they're committed. So
Well,
I
that's- remember,
believe
Test
they're all
ended
gonna
up,
show up.
right? Like, I don't think. I mean, I guess it's nice to believe. I hope they show up because like there's so many cool things you can do from Delve, but I wouldn't put it past like Horde, who's been doing all the work, to like declare victory and go, yeah, all right, it's time to go home.
Yeah, you know,
They've done
it is
everything.
possible, but I don't think that's what they're gonna do. I don't think that's what they're gonna do. But we will see. We'll see.
Yes.
Guys, thanks everyone for hanging out. Thanks for the shit ton of gifted subs. Like that was a little crazy. I'm not gonna lie.
I think it was,
Usually,
I was like 40. I think
20,
yeah.
25 subs and then a bunch of bits.
yeah, and then usually I don't want to interrupt the podcast for stuff like, but there was like so many like it was like, whoop. So I had to say something there, right? And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bo, thanks for coming on. And guys, I'm gonna put on the end stream, and then I'm gonna add the picture at the end. So if you want to see Bo in his costume, just give me a couple of seconds. I'll put it on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
Look, someone else just did 100 bits.
And Miranda, thanks for the help.
Yeah.
And then everyone, see ya on the next one.
Yep. See ya.